Thanks so much for coming out. This is really special. And I'm thinking for every one of you here, this is a special occasion. And Janet and everybody who put this together, welcome out. And there are so many stories to tell about Bob and stuff. And before I left the house, John Gallagher tried to get me to tell a story. And I told John, put it in print because I'm leaving the house. And he goes, just call me and I'll tell it to you. Ain't no way. But anyway, Bob and I have a long history. Actually, not quite as long a history, but we would have shared a soapbox if we crossed paths in the 1980s. Americans are opinionated, political, earnest, and upbeat. The Bob I got to know suffered no fools and was confident of his feelings. Bob expressed them as settled law. Segarini could expertly draw on history, point to a consequential moment in music, and draw correlations and insight. He was also a terrific writer who could pull those impressions from his mind from the written page. This is where I pause. Bob was a writer first, an observer and a wordsmith. In the early 1970s, Segarini moved to Canada, where he became a prominent figure in the rock music scene. He co-founded the band Roxy in 1972, which later evolved into the Wackers. The Wackers released 3 albums between 1971 and 1973. Blending rock, pop, and folk influences. After this disbandment of the Wackers, Bob didn't falter. He embarked on a solo career, a testament to his determination and love for music. The release of his debut solo album, Gotta Have Pop, in 1978, garnered critical acclaim, and is considered a power pop classic. He continued to release solo albums throughout the late 70s and 80s and into including On the Radio in 1979 and Goodbye LA in 1980. Now, Bob and I have had a few conversations, so I want to share part of this one with you. The Segarini family, this is from Bob. The Segarini family began from humble beginnings. His father, a hardworking blue-collar, self-made man, never finished 8th grade, but was the kind of guy who quit school to go to work. He and his 3 brothers supported the family after they moved from Italy to Northern California. His father, though not particularly musical, was a wonderful guy. My mother was very supportive, he said. I tap danced from the time I was 2 until I was 5, mostly to shine on Harvest Moon. Did a lot of country fairs and church functions, too. I took up the accordion at gunpoint for my dad. It's Italian rite of passage, we know that. From the age of 5 until 12, I played the accordion. Then my uncle, Albert Bidwell, at the time the secretary-treasurer of the local American Federation of Musicians, gifted me with an AFM card and a Student Prince acoustic guitar from Sears. That moment, that guitar, it changed everything. It was a turning point that led me to where I am today, a testament to my passion and dedication to music. The first album I ever did was with RCA. It was a band called Family Tree, and the album was called Miss Butters. The Joffrey Ballet, when they were still in Seattle, wanted to turn it into a ballet. But when they left Seattle and moved to New York, their new owners blew off the deal. When my dad passed away, my cousins and other family members sat around the kitchen table and told stories about him. Many I have never heard. For example, I found out about him. He was always disgruntled with me because I didn't go into the family produce grocery business like the rest of the second generation of Segarinis. And even when it was evident that I had chosen music over grocerying, he hadn't anything to say except, don't ever sleep and get a haircut. I grew up more on the R&B thing. The first song I wrote was in the 8th grade, and it was called Juvenile Delinquent. I think I heard this earlier. 8th grade. I also wrote a song called Susan about the girl who was a couple of years older than me and that lived across the street that I had a massive crush on. I recorded it when I was 13 or 14. One of the 2 acetates made was obtained by a friend in Stockton and at a estate sale, and is now in my possession. I was trying to be Dion in the Belmonts. As far as writing prose goes, or writing about all the crap I've been through or done in my life, I grew up reading Ralph Gleason and Herb Caen. Ralph was the music critic who started a big band guy and graduated to jazz and rock. My uncle Albert got me to the AFM and took me to San Francisco, to the Black Hawk and the Purple Onion to see Billie Holiday, Miles Davis, and so many others. I was 11 and 12 years old. The clubs had what they called a green room, named after the old green glass of Coca-Cola bottles. And if you were adult, you could be there underage. If you weren't, I saw Earl Father Hines. I saw Errol Garner. I saw all the greats, all of them, including Mose Allison, who sang "Don't Do Nothing Till You Hear From Me," with no vibrato, Parchment Farm, and Seventh Son. The early education led me to rediscover Mose Allison in 1976 when he released my favorite of his to this day, "Your mind is on vacation, but your mouth is working overtime." When I was fortunate enough to go with my uncle to see all of these artists, Ralph Gleason was the connective tissue between me and that music. I read Ralph voraciously, and I read Herb Caen religiously because it just kept San Francisco alive. And I love San Francisco, my second favorite city on earth. Toronto is the first, for the same reasons I love San Francisco, music and food. And I read them faithfully, and then when Rolling Stone came out, I never missed an issue. I never forgot about this. The first issue had a picture of John Lennon on the cover, and it folded in half. It was like a newspaper. There was a big picture, half front page, and John in makeup for How I Won the War. It was all about John Lennon, and it wasn't Beatles stuff. It was like, how does he put on his pants? Focused on him in the movie, not what's your favorite color, what's your favorite food, like those teenage magazines. So you read Rolling Stone cover to cover, and they got me to reading a lot of music magazine. Those are Bob's words anyway. So a little story. On my radio show, Bob would call me and he'd say, "Can I come on?" And I go, "Okay, which Bob am I getting for this show?" And of course he's coming on. And the first time he came on, he just we opened the mic and he went after me. And I don't know why he went after me, because he didn't know me. And then somewhere about 20 minutes in, he goes, "I like you." Okay, so that was settled. And we worked on from there. But the last time we got together, it was so funny. Greg Godovitz set this up and wanted him and Segarini on the show. So this is from that show. I booked Greg Godovitz and Segarini on my CIUT 89.5 show several years back. A Thursday 9 a.m. start. Greg arrived with words in his head, "No Bob," en route. 20 past the hour, Segarini strutted in, partially clothed in whatever was worn the night before, lugging a mostly spent bottle of vintage Kentucky bourbon and shot glasses. 9 a.m. Bob's on fire. Hilarity. Gatto and Segarini are ribbing each other. Bob hands me the bottle and insists we drink on air. First, that will not happen. Second, it was the last inch of possibly a 40-ouncer, and it looked filthy. Greg and I had nothing to do with this. Bob then twists the bottle back into the crumpled bag, and hands it to me for some travel music. "Don't waste this. It's the very best. I'm thinking you, being a Kentucky kind of guy, will appreciate this." So Greg Godovitz called me yesterday, and he wanted everybody his best wishes, and he wanted to say something about Bob, and he said an experience they had. So this is from him. "Don't believe a word I say." It was Tuesday, August 16th, 1977. It was raining somewhere. Seeing the cell phones were not invented yet, Segarini did his usual and sent an urgent message by Raven. I read, "Urgent. Elvis is dead. We have to do something. Get Doug Inglis and meet at 7 p.m. in an 8-track studio at Thunder Sound." I was there at 6:30. Inglis got there at 8. Segarini called from Bimbleman's bar and said he'd be late. He arrived around 9 o'clock. He had some notes that he'd written at the bar, but they were virtually unreadable, what with various stains and smears obscuring what I assumed were lyrics. I could barely make out the title, but it appeared to read, "Don't believe a word I say." I played my old 1952K bass. Inglis opted for the studio kit, and Segarini sat down at the upright piano. I didn't know that he could play piano, and he didn't either. But it sounded in the pocket and loose enough that we appeared to be channeling the magic of the king. The 50s-style guitar part was added. Segarini nailed what could become a keeper vocal. And we gathered around the mic with a freshly arrived B.B. Gabor to add some Beale Street oohs and ahs. No drugs, no hangers-ons, no groupies, but there was lots of alcohol. We had accidentally recorded a classic. Later, Segarini and I, seated at the bar at Lee's Palace, when actress punk artist Juliette Lewis sauntered by with her entourage and stopped right in front of Segarini. She pointed a well-manicured finger at him and proclaimed, "You have an interesting face." Amongst other things, I thought. And we laughed and we laughed. In addition to his music career, Segarini became a popular radio DJ and host, and he worked with various radio stations across Canada, sharing his extensive knowledge of rock music and engaging with listeners throughout his charismatic personality. That's Bob Segarini and the words I have for you right now, and I hope you appreciate that. So we have the first band here, and this is going to be the Wackers. I'm pretty sure. Okay. The Wackers were formed after Roxy, a California band Segarini was in, disbanded. With their roots in West Coast burgeoning rock scene, the Wackers brought a blend of melodic rock and harmony-rich pop. Reminiscent of the Beatles and the Beach Boys, Segarini alongside Randy Bishop, Bill Cooch Trochum, and Spencer Earnshaw crafted a sound that was both nostalgic and fresh, leading to the release of their debut, Wackering Heights, great title, in 1971. Their energetic live performance and catchy songwriting quickly garnered a dedicated following, particularly in Canada, where they found a welcome audience. Welcome, the Wackers. Thank
you, Bill. Hi. I'm Rand Bishop. You may remember me if you're long enough in the tooth as Randy Bishop. The Y dropped off in about 1988, and I never found it again. I worked with Bob Segarini very closely for about 6 years, from 1969 till 1975. But I knew him long before that. When I was in high school in the Portland, Oregon area, the family tree used to come and play in Portland quite regularly. And being a young aspirant who wanted to be a rock star myself and had my own little garage band, I really looked up to Bob. And the family tree was an interesting band because at that point in time, in about 1966 or so, most of the bands were dressed casually and everybody dressed differently, but the family tree were colorful and stylish, and Bob would come on stage in 3 or 4 different vibrant colors with a huge brimmed hat, and he was up there with his beak of a nose coming out from underneath that hat, this scrawny little guy with that big voice. And so I really kind of idolized Bob as a teenager, and I think Bob brought a lot of young musicians along and gave them their opportunities to become professionals, and I think I was one of the first to enjoy that privilege. We're going to go back first, before the Wackers, to a couple of songs that I remember. And the first one, excuse me. The first one I heard before I even knew that Bob wrote it, because it was recorded by Jose Feliciano. And then, subsequently, when I was asked to join his band, the band Roxy, we re-recorded this song. And after I joined Roxy and we moved to Los Angeles, I was with Bob when he spent every penny that he earned on that Jose Feliciano cut. Going from one shop on Sunset Boulevard to the next, primarily Fred Siegel and another shop. And by the end of the day, Bob had 6 or 8 bags full of expensive velvet bell bottoms and Afghan, embroidered jackets. And I was sitting there in my Levi 501s across the table because he spent the last of that several $1,000s on lunch for me. But I felt like such a dildo sitting there in my Levi 501s when he was adorned in his rock and roll finery. This song that he made that money and spent it in my presence is entitled, You've Got a Lot of Style. 2, 3, 4. You've got a lot of style to go out all alone. I would not mind so much, but your home is my own. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sunshine bright. You've got a lot of style, and I've got a lot of pride. You look into my eyes and see my disbelief. I did not know that I would suffer so much grief. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sunshine bright. You've got a lot of style, and I've got a lot of pride. Oh, now na na na. Na 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 na. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sunshine bright. You've got a lot of style, and I've got a lot of pride. So I will write one final note to say my last goodbye. No, it will never work out, 'cause neither of us would give it a try. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sunshine bright. You've got a lot of style, got a lot of pride. Oh,